Point. A suspect is in custody for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Who he is and what his motive may have been.
And in New York City, Zoran Mamdani goes steady in the polls and secures an important new endorsement.
And President Trump says that the U.S. has conducted a second strike on an alleged drug vessel near Venezuela. All that and more, Talking Points starts right now. Good evening and welcome into Talking Points. I'm Ben Bascuk.
And I'm Alex Burstein.
We begin tonight with the nation once again in shock after a horrific act of political violence. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk shot and killed on a college campus in Utah. After a 33-hour manhunt, the suspected killer is now in custody. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson is expected to appear in state court tomorrow. Robinson is being held without bail on charges of aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, and obstruction of justice. He remains in a special housing unit under watch pending a mental health evaluation.
Over the weekend, Utah Governor Spencer Cox said that Robinson is not cooperating with authorities. Investigators are pointing towards gaming and the dark internet culture as potential factors that radicalized him. Now, the fallout of Kirk's death is flowing throughout Washington as both Republican and Democratic lawmakers worry that violent attacks on political figures could become more common. Here's Democratic Senator Mark Kelly, whose wife, Gabby Gifford, a then U.S. House rep, was non-fatally shot at a community event in 2011.
Whether you're a governor or senator, a member of the House, president of the United States, you have to be very careful about your words because people are listening.
Now, some political leaders are canceling public appearances while others rely on police presence to keep them safe. President Trump continues to accuse Democrats of stirring up violence, saying, quote, "Then you look at the agitator. You look at the scum that speaks so badly of our country, the American flag burnings all over the place. That's the left. That's not the right," end quote.
Elon Musk, who serves as the CEO of X, wrote on the social media platform that, quote, "The left of the party is murder. If they won't leave us in peace, then our choice is to die." Here's Fox News host Jesse Waters in a broadcast earlier this week.
They are at war with us. Whether we want to accept it or not, they are at war with us. What are we going to do about it?
In response, Maryland Governor Wes Moore called to tone down the rhetoric. Moore, in a statement, said, quote, "I just think it's important for the president and anyone else to understand that your words matter, and leadership is how you lift us up in darkness, not how you use it as a moment for opportunism and to introduce more darkness and finger pointing into an already horrific situation."
Now, due to increasing threats against public officials, the Trump administration is asking Congress to spend an additional $58 million to expand security for the executive branch and Supreme Court justices. The request comes after the president stripped former Vice President Kamala Harris of her Secret Service protection while Congress negotiates a stopgap funding bill.
According to NBC News, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries told lawmakers that he and Speaker Mike Johnson are discussing an extension to boosted security spending. The enhanced spending expires on September 30th.
Several historically black colleges and universities, or HBCUs, went into lockdown last week following terroristic threats. Analyst Amelia Carr is here to give us some insight into the occurrences. Amelia, it seemed last week like each shelter-in-place issued on Thursday only put more HBCUs on high alert. What universities kind of started that and first issued those lockdowns?
On September 11th, Alabama State University, Hampton University, Virginia State University, University and A&M College, and Bethune-Cookman University locked down in response to potential threats. Spelman College in Atlanta also requested for its students and faculty to avoid campus due to a threat made on an earlier date at nearby Clark Atlanta University. The string pulling these universities together is their classification as HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. This legally indicates each school having a predominantly black student body, with all of the stated schools having black students take up at least 60% of their population. This is not the first time that HBCUs have faced threats like these. Back in 2022, several HBCUs faced bomb threats so severe the FBI opened up an investigation. Despite the fear that the threats caused, the FBI called them a hoax. However, they will continue looking into them. In a statement, they explained that they, quote, take these threats very seriously because it puts innocent people at risk. As of now, the lockdowns have been lifted on the universities, despite some of them lasting into the weekend. Ben, Alex, back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Amelia. Well, just a couple hours ago, President Trump announced on Truth Social that U.S. military forces carried out a second strike on a boat trafficking drugs in an undisclosed South American water location. This comes just 2 weeks after the military struck another boat supposedly carrying drugs in the Caribbean. In the post, which is accompanied by a video of the strike, President Trump said it killed, quote, 3 male terrorists in action. Trump sent out a warning in the post saying, quote, if you're going to be transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you. End quote.
After a short break, Trump threatens more cities with the National Guard, where he's targeting when we come back.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Oh, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Jason, let's go see your room.
How is it? Is it good?
Well, Thomas, you've got prediabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
Welcome back into Talking Points. Well, TikTok goes the clock on the TikTok ban, but a solution may be near in sight. The deadline is set for this Wednesday, but after trade negotiations between the U.S. and China this week, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says they've agreed to yet another tentative deal. Bessent says the deal includes framework to introduce U.S. ownership and is between two private parties. Prior to Bessent's announcement, Trump hinted at the proposal on Truth Social, adding that young Americans will be very happy. The deal is set to be finalized this Friday during a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Millions of dollars worth of birth control pills and other contraceptives for people in low-income countries have been destroyed after direction from the Trump administration. The pills and hormonal implants were purchased by the agency before it was dismantled earlier this year. They've been stuck in a Belgian warehouse for the past few months after the State Department said that contraception was not, quote, life-saving, and that the U.S. would no longer fund the purchase of birth control products for low-income nations.
Now, according to the New York Times, several organizations, including the Gates Foundation and the Children's Investment Fund, offered to buy or accept a donation of these contraceptives. The government would have taken on no cost in this scenario. The administration decided to destroy almost $10 million worth of products, with the operation costing another $170,000. Early voting for New York City's mayoral race is just 40 days away, and it's still unclear who will still be in the race in November as President Trump tries to shake it up to increase Zohran Mamdani's chances of losing. Joining us in studio to bring us deeper into this is Talking Points analyst Drew Matiasek. Drew?
Thanks, guys. That's right. We're a little over a month out from New Yorkers casting ballots in this race, and President Trump is trying to intervene. A report came out in the New York Times a few weeks ago claiming the Trump administration is trying to offer both incumbent Mayor Eric Adams and Republican challenger Curtis Sliwa positions in the federal government to make the race a head-to-head match between Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani and former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Now, why exactly would the president want the Republican nominee to drop out and make it a race between two Democrats? Well, it's all in the numbers. Emerson College came out with 2 polls last week, one with all 4 candidates and one with just Mamdani and Cuomo. The first poll shows Mamdani with a 15-point lead and Adams in dead last. The second poll shows Mamdani with a 7-point lead in a matchup against just Cuomo, cutting his lead in half. And not only are Republicans split on who they want to support this November, so are Democrats, especially some party leaders in New York who still have not endorsed Mamdani, who won the Democratic nomination back in June. Yesterday, Governor Hochul endorsed Mamdani after facing months of pressure from progressive leaders across the country. But 2 prominent Democrats are still choosing the path of silence: House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and New York Senator Chuck Schumer. Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen spoke out yesterday against Democrats' refusal to endorse Mamdani, calling it, quote, spineless politics.
Donald Trump and New York's financial elites see that as a threat. The idea that everybody who works in New York City should be able to afford to live. Yet, many Democratic members of the Senate and House representing New York have stayed on the sidelines. That kind of spineless politics is what people are sick of.
Well, Drew, welcome to the desk. So that was Senator Chris Van Hollen. He's talking about the price of living in New York City. And I want to kind of start by asking about Mamdani's platform, because a lot of the things that he's talking about are things that are accomplished at the legislator level in Albany, not necessarily in the position of New York City mayor. He had a 50% absentee rating when he was in the legislature. Can he raise the price and raise the tax on income in the mayoral seat if he did win the election?
It's going to be really, really tough because, like you said, to do this whole statewide tax proposal, while a lot of the richest people of New York live in New York City, this isn't a New York City issue. This is a state of New York issue. It would have to go through Governor Hochul, through her budget process in January, which would also have to go through the Assembly and Senate. Now, while Democrats do have a supermajority in the Assembly, they just lost their supermajority in the Senate last November. And, you know, with upstate New York politicians, there's a big difference between upstate Democrats and downstate Democrats. That divide might be enough not to get anything passed.
Well, and Drew, you're talking about New York losing Democratic seats in the Senate, and kind of across the country, favorability numbers for Democrats going down. Then you look at these new polls, and across the board, Mamdani's over 50% on favorability. What's he doing differently from other Democrats that's making him so favorable with the public?
It's his social media presence and his ability, you know, to be able to talk to voters in a way that everything makes sense for them, and to create these unorthodox events, you know, throughout the campaign, like walking across New York City. Join me on my journey to walk across New York City and just talk to voters. His social media platform, like you know, I was saying earlier, he has an issue with the licenses that are being distributed to food trucks all across New York City. So you know how he talks about it to voters? He makes videos, he sits down with them, he says, your halal is costing $10 when it should cost $5. Why? Because New York City is not giving out all of their business licenses to all these new food trucks. They're having to buy them on the black market, and your food prices go up. Things like that are what's creating this big shift in the electorate in New York City, allowed him to win against Cuomo in the primary, and now he's winning in the polls right now in a 4-person race.
Yeah, Drew, I'd love some $5 halal, but I want to get back to Governor Kathy Hochul real quick. She said she's opposed to hiking taxes and taxing high income earners in the state of New York. So even with this endorsement, how is she kind of reconciling those differences? Because this is, yes, an election campaign for Mamdani as much as it is a re-election campaign for Kathy Hochul, and she really can't afford to lose those establishment Democrats.
No, and it's put her in a really tough position because her lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, that's running right now, has taken a much more progressive approach on his campaign than she has. He was one of the first ones to endorse Mamdani in this race, or maybe not one of the first ones to endorse him, but one of the first big statewide elected officials to endorse him. And he's just taken such a progressive approach, especially with healthcare, attacking the governor on a lot of, you know, the things that he thinks the administration did wrong. She's got to sit on this teetering balance of progressives in New York that are becoming more progressive because of Mamdani, while also maintaining those establishment Democrats in the city and in upstate New York. it's going to be a really, really tough year for her if Mamdani gets elected, to see what she's going to do, especially if she has a tough challenger in the general, if she can get past Delgado with, say, someone like Elise Stefanik.
Yeah, I mean, New York's a big place, and you definitely see in those rural areas more red, even though people think that New York City blue. So thank you so much, Drew. We'll be watching that race very closely in the next couple weeks. Well, this morning, President Trump announced he plans to call an emergency and federalize D.C. police again if the department doesn't cooperate with immigration officials.
Memphis now joining the list of cities where the president plans to mobilize the National Guard. Analyst Riley Underwood is here in studio with more. Riley?
Yeah, well, Trump says it's a crackdown on crime. Memphis will be the third city that President Trump has deployed the National Guard to, joining Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. The administration points to high homicide rates and drug trafficking as reasons for moving troops into the city. Memphis has the highest violent crime rate in the whole country. Officials say Guard units will assist local police with patrols and security operations, but critics argue the deployment is politically motivated and that sending soldiers into American streets could escalate tensions rather than solve the problems. Memphis Mayor Paul Young says it wasn't his call.
The National Guard, which they have the authority to do. I want to be clear, I did not ask for the National Guard, and I don't think it's the way to drive down crime. However, that decision has been made.
For now, Guard troops are expected to remain in Memphis until crime levels show what the president calls, quote, significant improvement. The announcement Friday is viewed as phase 2 of Operation Viper, the nationwide FBI anti-crime initiative launched this summer. Young indicated he was receptive to some federal law enforcement help, but didn't want the National Guard deployed to his city against his wishes. Despite this, Trump says that the troops will be a warm welcome.
Memphis is
that's the next city.
Deeply troubled. And the mayor is happy. He's a Democrat mayor. The mayor is happy, and the governor, Tennessee, the governor is happy. Deeply troubled. We're going to fix that just like we did Washington. The National Guard and anybody else we need. And by the way, we'll bring in the military, too, if we need it. But National Guard.
Governor Bill Lee has voiced his support, but the details like how many troops will come, what exact duties they'll have, and how long they'll stay, those are still being worked out, guys.
Well, Riley, thanks for joining us at the desk. And I think Memphis is really the most interesting city we've seen this employed to, because it's this interesting dynamic where you have a Republican governor in Tennessee, a Democratic mayor in Memphis. How do you think this plays out in a state like that, and would it work in a state where maybe there's a Democratic governor as well?
Well, it's really interesting. We were talking about it before the show. We were saying, well, if the government grants the National Guard approval to do this, they can actually make arrests, which is different from what we've seen in Washington, D.C. So how that all plays out, I'm not sure just yet. But Bill Lee, the governor of Tennessee, he's on board for this. He says he wants the National Guard in Memphis. The mayor, not so much, but he's better off about it than the Washington, D.C. mayor was. He sounds like he will be receptive to the help and kind of working with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Republican governor. If it is authorized by the governor, like you said, they have that arrest power. I think that's what we're hearing, is that's a primary concern among the residents of Memphis. I mean, these are National Guardsmen. They're not police officers, so they're not trained in the same policing exercises that law enforcement is. And the last thing, a big concern that's being cited, is the whole Tyree Nichols situation from back in 2023, where we saw mass riots after a man was brutally beaten and killed by police officers. And they want to avoid that situation at all costs. So how do we think they're going to do that? Because if the National Guard's coming in, schools are struggling there, there's been cuts to funding in other areas, how are they justifying the funding to the National Guard?
Well, I think it all comes back to campaign promises. He didn't promise anything about education. He promised that he was going to deport these illegal immigrants, and he was going to cut down crime. And so that's exactly what he's doing. He's big on those campaign promises. And I mean, people can hate all they want, but sometimes you do got to look at those numbers. When the National Guard was deployed to Washington, D.C., violent crimes dropped 50% from the same period last year, and burglaries down 50%, car thefts down 35. So you can say, well, this isn't a good look, and it may not be, but it also got to take into consideration those numbers, and they do tell a story. And if you can get those violent crimes down that much, that does say something on the other side as well to his favor.
Well, it's interesting to see with these numbers, because if you look at Memphis, it's a city that has seen 25-year lows in crime, and even with D.C., Trump saying there's lower crime, but he said there's no crime. That's obviously not the case. It's really hard for these cities to kind of create a benchmark, because major cities, they're going to have crime. You also have the issue of summer's coming to a close. That's usually the highest crime areas. So this is a very interesting time of the year for this to be happening, where crime's already dropping off, and then those numbers might be taking a turn as well.
But Riley, you bring up a good point when you say this is the campaign platform people voted for. I think Republicans keep saying on the outlets, they're saying, hey, this is the referendum the American people wanted back during the election, and now they're getting it. So if he's delivering on those campaign promises, I imagine he would be polling better with Republicans than he is right now. We'll have to see how that National Guard deployment plays out when he's justifying that in contrast to cuts to education and social programs in Memphis as well.
Yeah, completely agree. And also, I want to turn our focus back to Washington, D.C., because the 30-day bill that he put in that says the troops are going to be there, well, that expired last week. There's still just under 1,000 National Guard troops left, but I think they might be sending them back because the D.C. mayor says that her police will not cooperate with ICE. And so Donald Trump goes on Truth Social. He says, well, if you're not going to cooperate with ICE, I'm going to send them all back. So this may not be the end of the National Guard in D.C., and it's just the beginning of the National Guard going down to Memphis.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to keep an eye on how the National Guard is monitoring those crimes of poverty going forward. Thank you so much, Riley. Well, after the break, NATO scrambles jets to shoot down Russian drones over Poland. The American response to Russia's actions. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro is set to serve 27 years in prison after the country's Supreme Court found him guilty of plotting a coup. Bolsonaro lost his seat after the 2022 election. The court's judges say he acted against the nation's democracy to maintain his power. Charges include participating in an armed criminal group, organizing a coup, and damaging government property. Today's ruling follows Bolsonaro's house arrest. That August charge was unrelated to the ones he faces today, but both drew criticism from the Trump administration. President Trump called the case a, quote, witch hunt, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio added that the U.S. will retaliate accordingly. Trump threatens further sanctions on Brazil, including revoking visas for the nation's Supreme Court justices. And Russia is once again testing the waters with NATO. Just yesterday, the EU's foreign policy chief accused Moscow of, quote, reckless escalation after a Russian drone flew through Romanian airspace. We welcome Talking Points analyst Emma Poper on her on-air debut. Emma, this is the second incursion over a NATO country in less than a week.
Yeah, that's correct, Ben. The first of these incursions happened last Wednesday when at least 19 Russian drones crossed into Poland. Poland is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO's easternmost border. NATO then sent fighter jets to shoot down the drones. NATO says the response was, quote, quick and skillful, end quote, in stopping any Russian possible incursion, though some criticize the American response to the incursion and their commitment to NATO. In a press conference, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte noted the American reaction.
I think the American reaction was very clear by the American president, also by the ambassador here. It's absolutely clear that we all stand together on this. America's commitment to NATO is ironclad in every sense, there's no doubt.
The drones crossed into NATO airspace during aerial drone strikes in Ukraine. Russia's defense military says they did not target Poland during these strikes and do not wish to provoke NATO. Belarus, a close ally with Moscow, says the drone veered off course because of jamming. However, some European leaders believe the drones were intentionally set into NATO airspace to test NATO's military response. The NATO Secretary General says that NATO will continue to protect their eastern flank and all of their territory.
What this shows is that we will defend every inch of NATO territory, every inch of Allied territory, all 32 allies. And whatever the intent was behind this, yes or no, and whether it was a mistake or not, we are still looking into that. It was reckless, it was unacceptable. These are Russian drones, and
Well, Emma, thanks for joining us here at the desk. If anyone knows anything about international law, it's the words you don't want to hear, Article 4 of NATO. Can you tell us a little more what that means and how it was used this weekend?
Yeah, Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland, after the incursion, set into action Article 4. So Article 4 says the parties will consult together whenever, in the opinion of any of them, the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of these parties are threatened. So some of the times this can be mistaken for Article 5, and that's very different from this one. Article 5 says the parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all, and consequently agree that if such an armed attack occurs, each of them in exercise of the right or individual or collective defense, including the use of armed force to restore and maintain the security of the North Atlantic area. So you can see the very clear difference between these two. One is a consultation, and the other is, an armed forces attack. So we see that Poland set into Article 4, which is this consultation. So NATO needs a consensus if anything is to happen in NATO territory. So if they need to defend something, if they need to, talk to Russian Federation about what they are doing here, it needs a consensus. And so they put into Article 4 to get that consensus.
Yeah, so definitely a big difference there versus an attack on one is an attack on all, is what we were talking about earlier. But I want to ask, because Putin says this is an accident, but then we saw another drone over Romania previously as well. So what precautions is NATO putting in place in case this does happen again?
Yes, so there is going to be put in place an Eastern Sentry. So in Eastern Sentry, they're going to be putting, more armed forces, military. We currently have 10,000 American troops in Poland right now, which are stationed. So those are going to be put into action, and they're going to be protecting that eastern flank with all they can.
Emma, thanks for your time. When we come back on Talking Points, a new vote in the UN about a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. We'll have the results of that when we get back.
Yes.
To
make yourself feel okay to drive,
ZWX.
you're not okay to drive.
YGKLVW. Regular you.
You quit smoking and thought, that's that. But here's the thing about lung cancer. By the time you see the symptoms, it could be too late. But now, there's a new scan that can detect lung cancer early, when it's more curable. If you smoked, get scanned. Talk to your doctor or learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Well, the United Nations General Assembly overwhelmingly voted on Friday to support a two-state solution. You can see that behind us now in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The UN also urged Israel to commit to a Palestinian state. The approved New York Declaration sets out a phased plan to end the nearly 80-year-old conflict.
The vote was 142 to 10, with 12 abstaining, including Israel and the U.S. But on the non-binding resolution, hours before the vote, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there will be no Palestinian state.
That's all the time for you have on Talking Points. Have a great night, Syracuse.